Hi, everyone. Today is Saturday, December 13th, 2025. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Morgan, and this is a talk I host twice a week to discuss my experiences on the path of soul transcendence. This offering is brought to you by the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness with the encouragement and support of my friend John Morton, who holds the mystical traveler consciousness, which is the spiritual consciousness that does the work that we're doing here today. If you're new to the call, the format is simple. We're going to start by calling ourselves forward into the light, which is calling our awareness forward into the light of God that's already present. And then we're going to chant three Anai hues. Hue is an ancient name for God, and Anai invokes the quality of empathy and compassion. Then we're going to play a video clip from my teacher, John Roger. And then I'm going to do a reading from Rainer Marie Rilke. And then we can talk about whatever you would like. So, if you'd like to gently close your eyelids, we'll call ourselves forward into the light. Beloved Father, Mother God, once again we call ourselves forward into your love and light and sound. And as we reach up into our higher form, we ask to be filled, surrounded, and protected by the light of the Holy Spirit and the light of the Christ. And we ask for this, Lord, with love and understanding, asking that only that which is for the highest good will take place here, taking into account each soul's destiny on this planet. We open ourselves to receive even more fully of your precious presence, of the guidance and the healing and the clearing of spirit. And we ask for the clearing, that any karma or negativity that can be lifted be taken into the highest realms of light and dispersed into the nothingness from which it came. We ask that this process be guided and directed by the mystical traveler and Christ consciousnesses. For the energy and presence of the Lord Jesus Christ and John Roger to infuse all that we're doing. We ask for a blessing to be placed on this planet, that all beings everywhere be filled with joy and peace, that in accordance with your will, we see all things in the perfection of your presence. We ask for this loving and blessing to radiate from the very center of creation all the way out and back into the very depths of each soul. We are grateful to be gathered together and for all the blessings that you bestow, for we know that the blessings already are. And above all, we know that your will is done, and for this we give our thanks. And so it is. Berush Bishan.
Every time that I see an animal, whether it be a lion, a hyena, a vulture, which pretty much live off other things, or the zebras, and let's call it the other four-legged members that graze, I send the light to them in a very strange way to many people's point of view. Much like we send the light to elephants, that we say, this light goes to you and to all of your kind, and to all of those who would eat of you, and to all of their kind, and to your children, and to all of their kind, and to the children of all those who would eat of you, and all of their kind. Because that's what God did, and that's what's going on.
All right. This is a poem by Rilke. As once the winged energy of delight carried you over childhood's dark abysses. Now beyond your own life, build the great arch of unimagined bridges. Wonders happen if we can succeed in passing through the harshest danger, but only in a bright and purely granted achievement can we realize the wonder. To work with things in the indescribable relationship is not too hard for us. The pattern grows more intricate and subtle, and being swept along is not enough. Take your practiced powers and stretch them out until they span the chasm between two contradictions. For the God wants to know himself in you. All right. First off, is there anybody new to Soul Transcendence MSIA or these talks who would like to share? I let those people go first. So if you're on this call and you're new and you might think I'm talking about you, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll have you go first. Okay. And Mary, you've shared with me before, right? Once. Okay. Well, let's have you go first because I think other folks have shared with me more than once. So we'll go with you.
Awesome. Okay. Um, hmm. What I shared with you before, it was when my mom was dying, and your reframing spared us a lot of unnecessary suffering. So thank you. Um, so I don't know, 15 years ago or so, I started having these experiences of being shocked awake from deep, deep sleep. And it was from a smell. It was a burning smell, but it was like a nasty chemical, sulfurous, poisonous smell. And I'd pop out of bed and I'd run around the house looking for the fire, but it would fade and fade and fade and then just be gone. Um, it's happened several times. And then Once I got into MSIA and became an initiate, I had an opposite experience where I would be shocked awake from deep sleep, but it would be roses, or it would be, what did I get? Like a really fragrant fireplace, or, oh, there was incense. And I call it incense, but it's like nothing on this planet. And it was so beautiful. And I begged it not to leave, but also it would always just fade away once I was up. Um, and then this week, so it's been a long time. This week, I was shocked awake by the poisonous smell again. The evil smelling sulfurous thing came. And my body wanted to get up. I was like, all right, fine, I'll go. I'll look for the fire. So I walked around my tiny house. But I knew, and even as I was calling in the light, and clearing, I knew that if this was an entity, all it could do was scare me. It couldn't do anything to me. So there was like a real clarity that I wasn't under threat. And so that sovereignty part, I think I got that lesson. I learned that from my earlier experiences, but I feel like there's something more here, why it's back. And the thought came to me that maybe it's like, I don't know if a curse can be a thought form, but my ex-husband did curse me with great passion and damn me to hell. He blamed me, he hated me. And so is it something like that? And I feel like I'm just missing a piece of how to work with this or know what to do with this.
Yeah. And offhand, you feel like he's powerful enough to do that?
It's just been part of it where one reason why I stayed in the marriage so long is I was so scared of what he was capable of. Yeah.
Yeah. And your fear about what he was capable of was more from a past reference point. You
Um,
mocked up fear from this lifetime, but the fear preceded the evidence.
yeah. The triggering moment I remember is that the first time I left our baby home with him so I could go do something, he looked at me in the eyes with such a level of absolute hatred that I felt it like it woke up inside of me. This, like, I am in such trouble. I am in such trouble. So whether that was a past life thing, I don't know, but yeah. Um,
Yeah. When you initially mentioned it, so a couple pieces. What'll often happen, there's a kind of a generosity spiritually that I've witnessed in myself and others, that when we enter into the spiritual path through the movement of spiritual inner awareness, take initiation, there's a lot of ways to experience the sound current and the presence of the master. One way is obviously sound, and that's why we have reference points. Another way is visually. But oftentimes, I recall there was a specific smell around John Roger that I recall that was very much like jasmine or roses. And I don't believe he wore perfume of any kind that I'm aware of, but often when we're taking darshan, we're we're connecting into the sound current or we're more actively working in that space, we'll have an experience like a smell that matches that. The generosity comes where we seem to be under the wing of the protection of the traveler, where if we fully let go into that through a period of time, we may go through several initiations, both light initiations and sound initiations, and we're able to have some of the karmas that we agreed to complete in this lifetime that may be very shocking or may be very traumatic from past existences held at bay so that we can focus upon our immediate study and solidify our understanding of the sound current and our connection to that awareness. At a certain point, I mean, obviously, when we reach soul consciousness and we anchor a soul initiation, we're told, okay, now you have the choice of whether to work above soul or to go back in and work some of the karmas that you might have been able to, in some sense, bypass. Because the mystical traveler works with us by boring a hole through very thick layers of karma to get us established in each level of the sound current up to that point. What also occurs is we will often be able to bypass, even if we haven't reached soul consciousness, we're able to bypass the immediate karmas that are around us on a specific level. So, for example, the causal level might have a lot of emotional karmas, but we're able to bypass that in order to establish in the mental level because we are more efficient and effective working the karmas of the preceding level from the level above it or beyond. You have some very particular memories with this person, specifically around um, you being burned in a past life and using the accusation of witchcraft against you and using your intelligence as evidence of your diabolical nature and using people that you love as bargaining chips to try and manipulate you with that. So, in a sense, you could have a smell that is very oddly like the burning of clothes or the burning of flesh or the burning of belongings or the burning of a house. And it may be that just you tap into initiate or you tap into intuition by way of more of an olfactory or kind of a sensing that's kind of closer to smelling. And that just may be how you experience intuition.
Okay.
What occurred to me when you were sharing about this experience where you would wake up and smell, it's not that that went away entirely, it's that you weren't ready to address it. And now you are.
Hmm.
I'm not seeing an entity in the field that would cause that, nor am I seeing anything amiss. It is recreating an opportunity for you to choose your spiritual connection over fear. Whereas in that time, you attempted to admit to what they wanted you to admit to in order to stop the burning, but they burned you anyway.
Hmm.
So you allowed the fear to be more important than the knowing. So what's being recreated for you in a very harmless way is a simulation of the same circumstance. And each time you choose to go ahead and chant your tone and go into SCs instead of freak out about the smell, that's you completing that karma.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But now you have the reference point, the perfume and the sweetness. There's beautiful devotional songs. I think there's several poems by Kabir and Ravi Das that talk about, my guru is such a cunning perfume maker. I cannot help but be stained by that scent. And there's such beautiful quotes about that very same experience that you're talking about. And one of the beautiful gifts that comes with spiritual exercises and all of these experiences that we're allowed to have is that it becomes a reference point, an experience level, and a strength that we can stand upon even as we're tested by the negativity, and often the negativity of our own creation and our own memory patterns. It's, I would liken it to even relationships. It's like when you have a best friend or someone you love very, very dearly, even if they live far away, somehow going through the difficult experiences, but knowing that they exist somehow makes it more feasible, makes it more possible. After having tasted the sweet ambrosia of the sound current, after being stained by that perfume, no matter what we walk through, no matter what we go through, we cannot remove that scent. It's on us. We're stained by it. Many of the experiences we have, it's very interesting because the physical reality of a situation is often distinct from the internal reality of a situation. I've had that one in my life quite a bit, and I think people on this call can relate where physically everything may be working out just fine, that there's nothing to worry about, but internally we may torture ourselves for weeks and we may suffer over and over and over only to find that there was no point in our suffering because it was already handled. And I used to be worse than I am now about that. But I could have a situation where I talk to somebody and I regret a conversation for days. Just what was I thinking? Why did I say that? Did I offend someone? I don't do that as much anymore, but I know that I have the capacity to do that. Now, the reason I make this point is because as you work the karmas you need to work to complete on this planet and go home under the guidance and assistance of the mystical traveler, you may not have a physical karma that is sufficient or in alignment with the experiential karma you need to complete. So what happens is either you're going to have a dream, you're going to have a hallucination, or you're going to have a thought pattern that comes in and creates the intensity necessary to complete the karma. So it will mock it up for you so that you can have it. But then you look at your life and go, well, nothing really terrible happened in my physical life. I'm fine. But I had to believe that this guy that I was married to could murder me.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's true, that he was capable of doing that. And you may have been acting from a reference point from a lifetime where he was capable of murdering someone. So that might be the last reference point you have. But we're given these opportunities. And this is why I say it's like people get all into the explanation of it. Oh, what did I pick up from who and how one word? As quickly as I find the combination that unlocks it, I forget it because ultimately it doesn't really matter. Because this thing called perception and experience is fraught with so many layers, and each of those layers may be simulated. The idea of getting attached to a version of the story you're living in just seems silly. And all you really need to know is what am I experiencing? And how do I get connected into the spirit that is transcendent of that within me? And then how do I walk through this with acceptance, cooperation, understanding, empathy, and enthusiasm? So it's like you wake up and you know you're smelling something burning or something toxic. And you may get up, but just as soon as you get up, you can say, okay, well, this is obviously what I need to experience right now. And the good news is you have the wherewithal to go, well, the last 50 times I checked for this, this wasn't a thing. Okay, so what are you trying to show me? How can I complete this? What is it that's available to me? And people would say, well, what if you're just picking up an entity and the entity is making you do that? Like have that experience. I don't really see a distinction. It doesn't really matter where I picked it up. If it's in my field of experience, it's part of my karma, and therefore there's an opportunity to complete it and transcend it through the mystical traveler consciousness.
Okay.
So I'm very equal opportunity in my loving and in my clearing. I mean, goodness, if I sat around wondering where I got things all the time beyond the point of releasing it, I wouldn't get anything else done because I'd just be sitting there analyzing all the many things I pick up. And people may look at me and go, wow, that's crazy. He can go to a concert and come out squeaky clean, even when people are puffing weed and doing all that kind of crazy stuff at the concert, drinking alcohol. He comes out and there's nothing on his energy. Well, how do I do that? Well, the irony is I actually think I probably pick up tons of stuff. It just doesn't stay. It goes as quickly as it's on my field, it's already going into spirit. I mean, people think that John Roger was this being that just couldn't be touched. And it's not what I've heard. I actually think he picked up more than anyone I've ever seen. I used to see him in these seminars just taking stuff off people like crazy. And because I could see the energetic level, and I'd be like, that is crazy. In fact, I got myself all messed up about it because when I was young, because I could see the energy, I just didn't want to be yet another. I was so petrified of him having to take something off of me that I would avoid bugging him. And that was real stupid because I began to realize that like when early in my life, I wasn't picking up the same amount of stuff as other people, and I kept a pretty clear consciousness. And I tend to think that part of the reason it was easier for me to access him without people like blocking me from doing it is because he wouldn't pick up a bunch of stuff from me. But I had it all messed up in my head. Being spiritually evolved doesn't mean anything about the cleanliness of our physical existence. And it certainly doesn't mean not picking stuff up. I think it's more about letting the spirit do what it needs to do, letting the soul do what it needs to do in the process of its own destiny while we live here in a very responsible and effective way. And for me, responsible and effective is not putting myself in a plastic bubble. It's developing a kind of spiritual resiliency to where I can walk through any circumstance and know that whatever comes before me is God's gift to me, and that whatever comes before me is also God and is also just as quickly as it appears able to disappear into the loving that is all essence. So, in a sense, you become very opportunistic and very grateful and very positive when it's like, oh, cool, I smell something real funny. That must be an interesting thing for me to work with now. You know, I know from previous experience that there's nothing physical here. So this must be a really cool thing that I'm clearing. See, it's like an attitude.
Yeah. It also occurs to me that it was probably a gift because it gave me something that a question I could ask you. Because what's been going on inside of me is that whenever I would come up with a question, I'd ask inside, well, what do you think Jeffrey would say? And I'd get the answer. So I could never come up with anything. So,
Well, I look at the goal of all the work that I do is supporting people in realizing that they don't need to listen to me say anything and that they already have everything they need inside of them. I think that's the gift that John Roger gave to me. And as much as my comfort zone and what I would have loved would be to have like a very clear direction, in my 10% level of John Roger telling me what to do and how to do it. And sometimes I would be real jealous of like the old timers who got to really ask him like these questions like, oh, should I take this job, JR? Or what do you think about this, JR? And he would answer them. I didn't really have much of that. I think that my karma and my relationship with JR was very much he would listen, he would support, he would love, but I would write to him and I wouldn't get very direct answers like that, as in like you should go do this. I don't think he wanted lemmings. I don't think he wanted people who just follow directions. I think he created a community of very rebellious people. It's funny. People get all sensitive about the whole like the cult word and all that stuff because of what's on the internet and what's, in the 80s. And I was thinking to myself, man, if we're supposed to be some kind of cult that like recruits people and do all this kind of stuff, we're real bad at it. We're like really ineffective at what is traditionally considered an effective cult because we're a whole community of non-joiners and rebellious, annoying people who want an exception to every rule and think that we can cut in line.
So true.
And I think that JR wanted it that way. I think he wanted us to question everything, check out everything. I think he also wanted us to figure things out for ourselves. And everything I see, it's like there's a design to try to counter the natural effects of dependence that come into these kinds of spiritual organizations, where people become dependent on a power structure or dependent on a dogma or dependent on the last words that JR said we should do everything, you know,
Yeah.
every time we asked him to tell us what to do, he said, go inside and figure out what to do.
Yeah.
It's frustrating and it's difficult. But it's also such a gift, such a gift that we've been given.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when we have that direct experience, when we start to really know our God essence, it becomes the one thing in our experience that can't be taken away by this world.
Yeah.
The financial problems may come, the interpersonal problems may come, the health problems may come, but we never forget the mystical traveler within us. We never forget the God essence within us, that it's unshakable. Not because of some crap like faith. Faith from belief means nothing. Faith as an assumption based on the weight of experience means something. It's like I remember JR talking about an image of like getting into the car and turning the key and the car turns on every time because you just know it. You just know it every time. Except one time you turn it on and it starts sputtering, but then you have such strong conviction that it just turns on anyway because it's faith. it's beyond a belief or a hope. It's just the weight of experience. It's this momentum that we build each time we chant God's names. God bless you. Okay, Linda.
Hey, Jeffrey, thank you for calling on me. Um, it's been many, many months since I shared with you, but I had an experience. I've been having an experience with my son, Damien. He shared with you briefly once. Um, and he's been dealing a lot with AI stuff. And he sent me some song. He called me like at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I told him I was still sleeping. He said, I'll call you back. And then he didn't call me back, but he sent me this AI song. And in the AI song, it had references to his sister Lorelai and to him and to me. And it didn't even sound like his voice. I found it very abusive and upsetting. And I ended up writing back to him, uh, texting him back saying, I've tried to reach out to my grandchildren through you repeatedly, and you have blocked that connection. Please let them know that. And I kind of feel like I just put a lid on our relationship completely by doing that. But everything else I've done just felt like I've been accepting, promoting, and allowing abuse. And I don't want to do that anymore. So if you can help me with this in any way to lift, to clear, to understand, or I don't even know what I'm supposed to be learning with this anymore. I've lost my daughter to death, but I've lost her years before that from her narcissistic abuse towards me. And I feel like I'm still recovering from that. And I've tried to reach out to my son through her for years before I realized that was what she was about. And she blocked that connection or changed that, the narrative, and rewrote history and all that stuff. So I feel like I've lost both of my children. I was pregnant at 16, married at, had her at 17. So I feel like my whole adult life has been about my motherhood. And I know that I failed in many ways, and because I was young and dumb and didn't have much support. So I just want to put that out there to please, if we can. I feel like I'm at the brink of a new phase in my life, a new chapter, and I don't want to bring this with me anymore. I'm sorry to have to lose my son, but I don't want to lose myself anymore. So whatever you can shed light on this in any way.
Yeah, you're running a really strong story, and you believing that story is basically what's creating the suffering. Like what you just shared is a bunch of stuff you don't really know. It's your impressions and your ego position. And you're believing it and reacting to it emotionally. And if you want a new chapter, I would suggest that you let go of that story because you're losing in your fantasy. I mean, you said all this kind of stuff. I've made a lot of mistakes as a well, you don't really know. There are really no mistakes. You don't know if it was a mistake. You did exactly what the karma needed you to do, which include, what am I supposed to learn from this? Well, maybe you're supposed to learn from this. You started something in a past life and now you got to finish it. And so you're learning about finishing it. I mean, you think that intellectually you're supposed to learn something from it when learning can come in the form of witnessing the completion of a karma. It doesn't necessarily have to take the form of, oh, and I've learned the moral of this story and this Aesop fable is this. That's not always how life works. Sometimes life is just the completion of an action, and you get to learn, hey, don't do that next time. You know, you chopped off your son's head in a past life, and now you get to learn what he behaves like based on you chopping his head off in a past life. So you learn, okay, don't chop people's heads off in future, you know? You get what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily have to have this evolved definition to it. Sometimes the completion of the karma is itself a great teacher. As far as like him offending you or him standing in the way of you with your kids and the whole, you'd probably be further ahead that everything you accuse them of doing, you just direct it yourself and realize that you did that to yourself because you have karma only with yourself and all relationships are inside of you. So, not from a shame perspective, but from a healing perspective. So, um, if you take the phrase, he stood in the way of me interacting with my grandkids, if you just say, I stood in the way of me interacting with my grandkids, or if you just took the phrase, my grandkids stood in the way of me interacting with my son, or if you just took the phrase, you see what I'm saying? You can switch it all around, but you have a very fixed egoic story about how the world works and what happened to you and what your life means and all that kind of stuff. And if you really want to get into a new chapter, I would suggest you wipe the slate clean and you meet all of this for the first time. You running the past on yourself or others, or the circumstances of how you perceived your daughter's death, or the circumstances of how you perceive your relationship. You can have a really great relationship with your grandkids inside of you. You don't necessarily need to have physical contact to heal that inside of you. So it's just a question, and I feel like we've had similar conversations in the past. I don't know how many months ago you're talking about or when the last time we spoke was. I don't really keep track of that sort of thing. But I'll tell you that there's a similar theme. You tend to run victim stories and you tend to interpret reality in a certain way that causes you to contract internally and then react emotionally. And then that perpetuates other experiences because then the emotional reaction gets into your interaction with them and then recreates the same circumstance. So my suggestion is I think it would be good for you to repattern, to start to very consciously pattern in a different narrative, to let go of the past, to let go of the things that you think happened. Stop claiming to know things you don't really know, like what people think and what people's intentions are. You don't really know if another person was a narcissist. You just know what you perceived. You don't really know. So I would stop diagnosing everyone. I would stop accusing everyone. I would start just asking yourself, what is it inside of me that wants to have that experience? And then work that level. So, and this is another way of saying 100% responsibility. Take 100% responsibility for your experience. I'm not saying that you're at fault for the physical challenges you've experienced in your life. It's not a question of fault, it's a question of what energies needed to complete themselves through the pattern of your life called karma. That's not fault, that's just completion. What I'm suggesting is your interpretation of your life is the issue that we're dealing with here. The way that you've decided to interpret the experiences of your life and the way that you formulated an ego story and the way that you're trying to now build yourself up to justify not interacting with him or justify all that stuff, that none of that is necessary. If the karma is complete with somebody, you just tend to stop talking to them. It doesn't have to be like, well, this is the last straw. He said this screwed up thing to me and he sent me this really weird AI song and I'm just done. We're done. Like that, anytime you have to build yourself up to do something, you're in an ego position. You're coming from ego and you're going to get that karmic return. That's just that's just the way it works. So what I suggest is this is like my honest opinion. I'm not judging you. This is not from any of that. I'm just observing. You said that you want a new chapter. You said that you want to be free of this. Well, being free of it is having a narrative that is free of this. So I think a more joyful and more effective question is if you decided that from this moment forward that you were going to live with the assumption and the knowing that God loves you and is blessing you in every moment, whether you know it or not, what would be the narrative that guides your life right now? Because believe me, as much as we can throw a pity party or we can look at the victim or we can do all that stuff about the past or even looking at the stuff of like somebody offended me, there's always opportunity to be outraged in this world. I don't know if you've known that. You just go on Facebook, you will find something to get outraged about. I mean, we live in a society filled with outrage porn. Just gets people going over and over and over, over and over and over. So you can always get outraged, but it is a misuse of energy to focus on that. There's always someone who can offend you, and there's always somebody who had a much harder life than you did on a very physical terms. I'm telling you, there are entire countries where the vast majority of the population lives worse than you at your worst. And that's their normal. So I think there's just an opportunity for you to question your thoughts, for you to assume nothing, and for you to just be taken by the beauty and miraculous blessing that is present in this moment, even in this moment, and in this moment, and in this moment, to discover new every relationship in your life each time you talk to each person in your life, to let go of whatever the negative fantasy is that you created about them. The reality is your son is doing the best he can with what he knows, and what he knows might be limited. And that's okay. He may be dealing with chemical imbalances in his brain. He might be dealing with substances and addiction. He might be dealing with any number of things. Everybody, everybody is doing the best they can. It is not easy being human. You don't have to be against him to just decide you don't want to talk to him anymore. It could be very neutral. You just be like, hey, I'm not enjoying our interactions. I sure love you a lot. Goodbye. It doesn't, you see, there's no story there. So it's like if you start to really watch in your life the things that you say and whether they're true or not, and whether you really, really know if what you're saying is true, you will start to repattern because I'll tell you right now, your basic self, your subconscious is listening to everything you say. So if you say something over and over and over about your life, whether it's true or not, Your basic self is going to go, oh, that's what you want to be true? Okay, let's produce that. So
So
I would just be very conscious about how you define your life. And it's like if anybody asks you, how are you doing? I'm doing great. God loves me, and God gives me all the experiences I need to learn and grow and know my divinity even more. Well, but wait, you just filed for bankruptcy. How could that be true? Well, yeah, bankruptcy is that's an important part of my curriculum. That's the most important lesson I've learned in the last 10 years. You see, it's not about true or false. You're not going to get truth down here anyway. You're not going to get truth here. Everything I'm saying is a lie. Everything we say is a lie. We're not dealing in a field of truth. We're dealing in a fluidity of change on this level. So as long as you're dealing with a field of ostensibly bullshit, you might as well make it a very pleasant and loving bullshit, you know? So
the
that's
very same thing that you're telling me about the basic self hearing everything that I'm saying and how what I say is creating my reality is the exact same advice I've given to another minister on this call. Exactly. Out of your mouth to God's ear, to my mouth, to her ear. You know, I've said it myself. I know it's true. And
and we tend to tell other people what we need to hear.
uh,
I mean, I probably just do these talks to help me out. Oftentimes I say things and go, wow, would you listen to that? I didn't know that.
well, I do love my son very much. I did love my daughter.
No, no, no. You do love your daughter.
I do love her.
Stop pretending that time is real.
Okay.
There's enough of reality trying to convince you of that. You don't need to declare that somehow your love has a time box. Love is eternal. What you said is true. I love my son. That's a true statement. My
Mhm.
son wronged me. Is that a true statement? Fuck no. You don't know what wrong is. You're not God. How do you know what right and wrong is? That's above your pay grade. That's God's level. Justice is mine, saith the Lord. Why is that true? Well, because we don't know the intricacies of all of it. If we did, we would probably just go, wow, I can't even believe this got orchestrated so beautifully. I couldn't have designed this. I probably would have screwed this up. And here I am having exactly the experience I need to have in such a way that gives my son exactly the experience he needs to have, and that the two of us are actually learning exactly what we need to learn together, and that we're completing exactly the one karma, all at the same time, not screwing up the rest of the karmas of the planet. Wow, this is incredible. Who could have designed such a perfect system of loving, nurturing completion? We don't know enough to know what wrong and right is. We know enough to know what we like and don't like. So it's honest of you to say, I don't like what my son sent me. That's an honest and true statement. I had a negative reaction when my son sent me that stuff. Yes, that's true. You did have a See, that's dealing in a realm of truth. When I start diagnosing his thought process, when I start saying he stood in the way of me talking to his, there are infinitesimal possibilities for what's really going on. It could be his kids who don't want to talk to you. It could be he's completely in a fantasy world and he doesn't really understand what's going on.
Mhm.
He may not even realize he's standing in the way of anything. He may think that this is just your relationship with him.
Mhm.
It doesn't like, do you get it? It's like, it's not, we don't know that level. Stick to what we know, and the spirit will meet us there. Stick to what we actually know. I love my son is something you actually know. I love my daughter is something you actually know. And if you take it a step further, it's like I've been shaken so terribly in my life at times that all I'm left with is spiritual exercises work, serving works, and that loving is eternal and always present and always real. It's like everything else has been shaken in my life. Oh, but people are so loyal to you that they would never turn. No, I don't know any of that. I don't know any of that. What I know is my love is eternal, and that loving eternity is in everyone and everything all the time, all at once. If you stick to the things you really know, your entire life will change. Most human problems are created because people think that I think, therefore it's true, rather than simply I think, therefore I had a thought. That's all. Thoughts are not true, they're just thoughts. Truth is truth because it's true. It sounds very simple and very stupid, like coming out of my mouth right now, but it will literally change everyone's life. It's changed my life to just stick to what you actually know. And for me, it's like people may hear this and say, oh, now I have to censor myself. No, I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I just give myself permission. It's like, I know I'm going to go into untruth and I'm going to say, I'm going to talk a bunch of shit right now and get real mad and get real hot and bothered. And I'm going to let that part of me have its day in court and I'm going to stand on my soapbox. But when I'm done, I'm going to return to truth and I'm going to affirm the things that I know to be true. And I'm going to question the thoughts that I claim to know that aren't true, and I'm going to return to a peace that surpasses understanding. So I give myself ample opportunity to be an immature prick when I need to do that. And it does feel good. It feels good. Like, give yourself 20 minutes. Just say, for 20 minutes, I'm going to just say, how dare you to my son and talk shit about his poem and talk shit about his obsession with AI. And then when I'm done, I'm going to return to truth, which is I love my son. I don't really know what he's thinking. I don't really know why he sent it to me. I don't really know whether he's standing in the way of me knowing my grandkids. I don't, you see, there's a whole lot of things I don't know, but I do know that I love my son. And if we can get that real straight, I'm telling you, it will change your reality. Because most human beings perceive only what they believe, and they believe a lot of stuff that they do not have any truth behind. We tend to experience as humans more what we believe than what is there. You don't believe me? Go leave your keys in a place that you don't normally leave them, and you will find that you cannot find your keys for days just because they were not in the place that you believe they should be. I mean, human perception is so malleable when it comes to this. We tend to see what we believe, and we tend to not see what is outside the realm of our belief. And our beliefs tend to be formed by the thoughts that we reinforce and the focus that we reinforce. And if we can just stick to what we truly know and nothing more, everything changes. Reality itself opens up. And for me, like the whole story, the whole truth of your story comes down to one thing. I love my son. That's true. Everything else you said sounded a whole lot like bullshit. Didn't smell like perfume, just smelled like bullshit. But I love my son is eternally true. You got people doing these little reaction emoji things. They love and support you. Got fans out there, you know. And I think, like I said, I'm not saying this because I'm somehow beyond this. I'm saying this because isn't the suffering of yesterday enough? Is it? I've done this to myself so many times. Isn't it enough? Haven't we done this enough, you and I? This whole pretending to know and creating negative fantasies. Maybe from this day on, we speak to what's true. Nothing more, nothing less.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
God bless you, Linda. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Well, all right, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I love you. God bless you. Peace be still. The blessings already are.